What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe.
Obviously, probably going to start where you assume we're going to start, with Andrus Peat signing with the Las Vegas Raiders. Nick, you never know maybe what you have until it's gone. That was somebody that I think a lot of New Orleans Saints fans were hoping, could be that guy that kind of solidified the tackle position. You select one in the first round. Trevor Penning can kind of be that swing guy, and now he's gone, and you're hoping that Ryan Ramczyk maybe can find the field, although we've talked about that. Doesn't really feel likely. So, what's the plan now that Andrus Peat is in Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I think it would have been smart to bring back if the market dropped enough on him. It's going to be interesting to see how much money he got. I mean, I do feel like it's a hit. As far as what they think is going to work out. I mean, I think they kind of view Uli Udoh as kind of the swing guy in that position. But man, the offensive line, it just feels so thin. Until we see any of this stuff come to fruition, or how some of these guys are going to step up, I think it's just hard to feel good about that position overall. And I still have major questions about it. I think they're probably fine on the right side of the line with Fuaga and Ruiz, and then McCoy obviously at center, but the left side is still completely wide open. So I don't know what the plan is. I think they're hoping that Trevor Penning steps up and can be just a functional starter. I mean, Nick Saldiveri is someone that they still like at guard. Landon Young has some guard flex. He could be maybe the swing guy too. Udoh, if Penning steps up, could possibly be the swing guy. So they think they got the ingredients there, but I just don't. I don't feel confident in it until we see it. As far as Ramczyk goes, I don't think we're ever going to see him play football again. I mean, honestly, the way that it's kind of going, it just doesn't feel like he's gonna play again. You look at the contract and how he drops it all the way down to the guarantees. It kind of feels like there's just kind of like an agreement in place to please don't retire, because that would mess up the cap. Let this go for years, see how it is in a year. Maybe if everything comes together, make a decision then. But please do not make a decision right now. That's kind of my read on the situation. I think as things trend, though, I think everybody should prepare as if he's not going to play again. It seems like the Saints are preparing like that. If he does, it's a great surprise, but it just doesn't feel like he's gonna be able to play again.
How about one thing I hate about this whole O-line situation, Nick, is I'm thinking about, okay, well, how would it work, right? And the immediate fallback's a new scheme, Kubiak. Is Kubiak taking on too much of a sort of cure-all sort of vibe, right? Anytime you feel bad or think okay, how could it work next year? It's just Kubiak and the new scheme. Is it unfair how much expectations being heaped on someone who is relatively inexperienced at that job?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, I think it's definitely something. I mean, yeah, yes, I think it is. I think it is kind of the thing where it's okay, well, he's going to be able to fix this a little bit. In terms of the discourse, I even find myself leaning on that probably a little bit too much. It's just sometimes it's well, he should make it a little bit better, and he should, though. He should objectively, it should be better. I know the ranking on the offense and everything wasn't terrible last year. You look at yards per game, points per game. They actually ended up in respectable territory. The last 4 or 5 games were actually good. But I do think that just kind of everything being built a little bit differently should help a little bit. And there are some things that I do think will help the offensive line, just the strategy overall. I think the idea of 2nd and 10 runs, I think that's something that goes away, and that does put stress on your offensive line, because now you're in precarious third down situations repeatedly all the time. And, I think just little things like that are going to help. 1st and 2nd down in this offense, if you kind of, look at how all the other teams that have used it kind of approach things, there aren't a lot of deep drops on 1st and 2nd down, so that's stuff that can help your offensive line a little bit. They aren't having to block for third for long distances, and you aren't doing these deep dropbacks, so it's a little bit easier. But look, there is a point where it is 3rd down and you got to get 9 yards, and you do have to block, and I think stuff's going to come to the surface then. But look, it's tough because I'm trying not to I've actually actively tried not to endorse any type of optimism this offseason because like we get fooled by it year after year after year. There are ways though that I think that they can be the same or better on offense. And I'm actually like, I don't know. I mean, if they figure out how to block, like I think everything else is actually going to raise up a little bit because the scheme will be better. Derek Carr should be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Chris Olave isn't going to have like this like weird chemistry thing that's going to take 11 weeks to overcome next season. Like he should hit the ground running based on the stuff they figured out last year. Like the attitude of the receivers overall seemed to improve later in the season. Like I think that's something that shouldn't submarine early in the season. If Kendrick Miller's healthy, I think that's something that should help. You know, as much of a loss as Ramczyk is, like if Fuaga shows up ready to play, like that should be the same kind of like I thought Ramczyk kind of had a little bit of a rough season, and you know he was dragging that leg around, like so that's understandable. But that left side of the line, like, is absolutely the thing where there's a hole dug right now, and you know if it doesn't come together, like you're sweeping optimism right in there, and it's ready to go. Like so, there is this like huge, massive void that just looms, and until they figure that out, like all this other stuff doesn't really matter because you do have to be able to block. Like the only good thing about the line thing is it's going to be on the left side. So like if it's terrible, like Carr won't see it coming. So maybe he gets passes out, but it's not in his face and he's not getting rattled. But like it's insane, like that there are nobody that can block on the left side right now, and you know they have to figure that out. And they might have the answers inside. Like every time I talk to somebody, they they're like, well, look, this and this should work. Like the pieces are there. Like it's not as bad as it seems. I'm like, okay, maybe it's not. But until we see it, like I cannot believe that because I don't even know who's playing right now. Like that's a very scary place to be. You know, rookie camps next week, OTAs are after that. Andrews Pete just got signed, so anything that could like provide even fake comfort, I think is gone. So it's just kind of wait and see. But I mean, I feel terrible about how that offensive line looks.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Now, Fuaga is going to be somebody that in this rookie class is going to be, because of all the things, Nick, that you just laid out, is going to be a rookie starter, and he is going to have to be terrible to not be a starter on this football team. But what about somebody else in this rookie class? Because when you look around, the Saints had a really nice draft. No matter where you look, they got a high grade, and I think all of us agree they had a nice draft. Any other person from this draft class that you can see being a day one starter when the season opens up in September, you know, not like a rotational piece maybe, but like, hey, this is his position to lose?
I think Kool-Aid. I think Kool-Aid is going to be somebody that starts straight away. And I think that, you know, it's either going to be in the slot. And if it's not in the slot, I think he has a chance to play safety, actually. Like, I think he's going to be on the field no matter what. I mean, they didn't move up to draft him for him to sit. And, you know, I think Alontae Taylor has a really bright future. Like I'm really high on his potential, but like he did get benched twice last year. Yeah. And, you know, I think that if he comes in and I think Kool-Aid, when you watch him, like it immediately, like you just see the traits. It's like, okay, he could play in the slot. Like he tackles really well. He has good hips. His feet are quick. Like I think he's someone that's going to come in and compete with Alontae for the slot job. And then, you know, assuming Adebo and Lattimore are still on the team, I think those two compete for the slot job, and if Kool-Aid loses it, I think he could play safety. Like I don't think the inverse though. I don't see Alontae playing safety. So yeah, I think Kool-Aid's going to play right away. Going down the list, I mean, I don't think I see anybody else that's necessarily a starter right away. I like Jalen Ford a lot. He's kind of flying under the radar a bit. I think he's going to be, you know, a good player for a while. I don't necessarily see him starting. So I think it's really just kind of those two guys. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've talked about him enough. Like, you know, to me, and you look at the two Alabama corners, like I think his counterpart has a higher ceiling for sure. Like there's athletic skills there that are crazy. But like if you just go into it and you watch, and it's like which one of these guys is better right now? I think Kool-Aid is the better player right now. Like, in 5 years, is that going to be the case? Nah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to come together, and I think there's a chance, you know, for it to flip. But he's really good, man. He looks incredibly polished. Like there isn't a lot like that you're looking at, and you're like, he needs to get better at this. Like it looks like he's kind of ready to go right now, play right away, and I think he will.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you want to read more about Kool-Aid McKinstry. You can go check out neworleans.football. Nick has a very deep dive into some Kool-Aid film. And Nick, your answer kind of reflects the article in that I've rarely seen you as effusive in your praise about a player off of the tape as you are on Kool-Aid. And so when you look and you got Lattimore, Adebo, Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, I mean, where, like, is that one of the top cornerback rooms in the entire NFL? Is that top 10? Is that maybe even like pushing top 5?
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday. Like, I would have to go through and kind of look at everybody's, but it's hard to imagine it's not one of the more talented groups in the league. I mean, I think that just off the top two, like Marshon and Adebo, I think they're both, within the top 32. Like, if you're going by starters, like there's 64 of them. I think they got 2 of the top 32. I don't know where Taylor would rank within that. I mean, there's, other slot corners, but I think Taylor on the outside is a lot better than a lot of people's number 2 starter. I think Kool-Aid's better than a lot of people's number 2 guy. So, I mean, I think they probably have a good chance of having, 4 guys in the top, 65. So, like, if you have that, like, you have to be somewhere in the top range of the league. And they develop these guys really, really well too. It isn't just like acquiring talent. Like they acquire talent that fits and know how to make it better. So I think I would bet they probably got one of the top 5 rooms. And if that's, overstating, definitely, I think they're probably within the top 10. But they gotta be somewhere in there. I mean, just off the strength of the top 2. Yeah. And that's something they should be able to lean on. The secondary should be, and we say this every single year, the secondary should be the calling card of this team, and it ends up being it every single year. I mean, I think there's still some issues at safety. I mean, I think they're down one, but that's a credit to how well they just put together their secondary, that it's just kind of like not even really a talking point. Like, it's Tyron and Howden and then who else, and they use 3 so often, and you don't really see the kind of that like rangy guy that you could have out there that allows Tyron to move down in the box on 3rd down like they like to do. But it just kind of feels like they're going to figure it out. Like, that's just kind of one of them things that say whatever about DA, but I think he's been one of the better secondary coaches in the league for a long time. He knows how to get the right coaches for that position. He knows when to move on from coaches of that position and replace them. Everybody was worried about Richard. I think, the move to Joe Woods and Marcus Robertson was obviously the right thing to do. So I think they're gonna figure that out. But yeah, I mean that group has to be within the top half of the league, I think.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.